Welcome to the OPSQC podcast, helping entrepreneurs, innovators, and small business owners scale to profitability. The goal of this podcast is to showcase real businesses, real owners, tell their stories, learn a little, and have some fun while doing it. Today, we welcome Ed Egan of EE Workplace Solutions, with locations in both Wisconsin and Florida. EE works with businesses to identify performance gaps in their organizations and then helps them solve them by focusing on the behaviors and the work processes needed to drive the desired results. Services they offer include training, coaching, and custom solutions. EE does a lot of work with the county chambers and other groups training new business owners and entrepreneurs all the way to medium-sized businesses how to view their business through the lens of process and efficiency. Ed, thanks for taking the time to be on the podcast.
Thanks, Jared. I appreciate you having me today.
No problem. To start, could you please give the listeners a little bit of background on what EE is and how it came to be?
Yeah, so we're a business coaching and consulting and training company based up here in southeastern Wisconsin. Also have an office down in the Gulf Coast of Florida. I've got a former leader of mine that works down there. Worked with her for 10 years and brought her on as an independent contractor. It really came about, I was in 26 years in the corporate world, right? Working my way up through different roles and looking at like what I want to do in the future, right? And once I went, my second act of my career, but then I realized, the second act could come now. And I had these thoughts in my mind and just started working on a plan and trying to just start enacting it, right? Because it's one of those things where if I didn't do it and I had these ideas to go out and help small to medium-sized businesses in my community, if I didn't do it, I was going to probably have some regrets down the line. So I just figured start sooner than later.
Sure. Second act. I love that because so many people are looking ahead to that, in life right now. And COVID has presented an opportunity, I think, for a lot of people to enact that earlier, like you did. Okay. So can you give us a little bit of background where the name originated at and like how long you've been doing this?
Yeah, so I've been in business for about a year now. I've been thinking about it for about 2 years. The name EE really comes from my initials, but then it also comes with two things that are critical to my success in the past and also what I want to help impart on clients, which is efficient execution and evergreen evaluation of the processes that they install and that they operate to drive their business.
I like that. Efficient and evaluation. How many people work with you? You mentioned that you have a contractor down in Florida. So is there other people who work with you?
I've got the contractor down in Florida, but I do have some advisory people, some mentors up in Michigan. I'm actually going up to see them here shortly. Kind of connect back with them. They were with me as I started the business and kind of helped get me on a path. So yeah, it's just myself, the lady in Florida, and then just a couple people up in Michigan that I treat almost as my advisory council.
Very good. I like that because a lot of startups using advisors is a smart move because you don't have to go it alone. There are people out there willing to help, and we all have networks. And if you genuinely value those relationships and you connect with people in your network, there are people in earnest want to help you succeed. So using advisory groups is definitely a recommendation. Right. So we already talked about how many people worked with you. Did you have help forming the entity, or is this something you did on your own?
Yeah, so forming the entity was kind of like I did what a lot of people do, right? You start researching Google and you have all this information at your fingertips. Yep. And as I was doing it, I came across the Small Business Development Center in my area, which is about 40 minutes from my house. And I didn't know there was a Small Business Development Center 40 minutes from my house and that there's multiple ones across the United States as part of the Small Business Administration. So as I got going, I'm like, you know what? It's probably best to set up a free consultation with the lady up there. Met with her one day. And next, she got me involved in the entrepreneurial training program that they put on there, which was a 9-week course that helps you kind of go from start to finish, and a very process-based course, which really focused on developing a business plan. So you write the business plan as if you're going to be going to a bank right after graduation on that and taking it there looking for money, right? So it was a really great way to, I had my ideas, I had some Google research, but without having that structured approach to the entrepreneurial training program, it would have been a little more challenging. So that's really how it got started.
SBDC is a great resource. I actually tapped into them originally in the beginning, and that's where they connected me with the McHenry County Chamber of Commerce, actually. So I value, that's a great resource. I implore all new business owners, entrepreneurs to go ahead and utilize those. SCORE is another one. I love that you took the time to write the business plan as if you were going to go to the bank, because usually that's the only reason you would write a formalized business plan like that, is if you're going to go get funding. But it does force the diligence of actually stepping through that process. I do know a lot of business owners who have not created formal business plans just because they weren't going for funding. And after they've done it once or twice, they typically have it in their head, kind of like the framework of what they want to do. But it never hurts to get it down on paper.
Never.
Forces a frame of thinking that most people wouldn't otherwise come up with. So let's dig into Double E a little bit deeper, right? So you talked about being in the corporate world for 26 years and decided, okay, now is going to be a time or else you might regret it a little bit. What was the impetus? What kind of put you over the top to dip your feet in that water and just go for it?
It was actually two things. It was actually the work with the Small Business Development Center, and realized by getting connected with that organization, there was an opportunity to also do some education through the University of Wisconsin Parkside's professional and continuing education department. So it was almost, hey, there's a need for your services. We have a platform for you to be able to teach courses. Mm-hmm. And then it was also the fact of, we were hitting the pandemic, right? So I actually started July 30th of 2020. So it was, the decision I made was, you know what, I want to be there. I knew I wanted to do it. And I also knew I wanted to be there in this new wave of the new things of doing things. I knew, as you can see now, right, virtual is probably here to stay for a while, and the blended learning's coming back and the in-person learning's coming back. And it was more about, I didn't want to regret. I wanted to get started, but I also wanted to be at the upswing of coming out of this pandemic to help the businesses that I was looking to serve.
Okay. When you look at the two different aspects, right? So, I mean, when you're in corporate America, there's like, you're serving one set of, clients or audience, whether it's internal or external, right? And when you're dealing with like owner operators, there's a difference there. How do you discern that? I mean, do you find yourself approaching things differently when you're working with more the SBDC type groups?
Yeah, so I see myself using a lot of the same common things I learned in the corporate world, right? The buy-in, the change management. I think what I'm challenged with now, and what I'm learning more and actually love having the challenge of it, is that in the corporate world, generally, you're going to get them to yes. People are going to say yes. In the small business and the owner operator world, they don't have to say yes to you, right? You're not part of some bigger, great initiative. You are trying to help them become what they want to be. Right. And it's that, the easy way for me was I could stay in the corporate world. I had it pretty good. I was in good standing, but the challenge of doing it and helping people that haven't seen some of the tools and systems that are available in the corporate world was really what drives me. Right. So that was the emphasis on that was, I could very easily stay, right. And it could have been comfortable, but I need to challenge myself. And that's what part of this was about. So
you bring up a great point. These tools that are in use in large corporate America, these are great tools. Bringing them down to the small business aspect, it can be done affordably. And I think it can be done very well. I think there's a mental shift that you pointed out. There's a mental shift of the owners to be open and willing to accept that help. And the challenge that guys like you have is trying to help the owners understand the value in that, right? So what tools do you use to do that? I mean, as far as trying to help show them, look, this is a lean initiative. Let me help you do this because you're going to get X out of it.
Yeah. I think the biggest thing the tool I use is just some simple spreadsheets, some simple analysis forms, some simple assessment forms that really involve not only talking to them, but trying to get involved with their shop floor teams as well. And bringing those folks into the discussion and just trying to understand, what are your challenges that you perceive? What are the challenges that the operations that teams perceive? And then saying, okay, we don't need to have some expensive tool here. We need to have some communication, some collaboration, some team expectation setting. And we just need to help you build your team and engage your team, because you realize, I think what I found too is they have the knowledge, right? I don't have the knowledge of these owners they have for their business. It's that simple tools of, we don't have to have something installed. We can install behavior change. We can install communication channels, and we can just work together as a group to drive what you do and get you where you want to be.
I think that's one of the hardest things for business owners to grasp, right? Is they see consultants come in and advertise their services, and they say, oh, nobody knows my business as well as I do. And that may be the case, and it probably is the case, right? And a lot of 9 out of 10 times, we don't know their business as well as they do. But the service that we offer, that facilitation, that there's an unbiased view, there's a perspective there, right? That you bring to the table to say, hey, maybe you should consider X versus Y, because by them building their own process and being in charge of that for so long, I think there's an innate bias, right?
Yeah, we hear, like for myself, I have the ability to hear and see things that they might not be hearing and seeing right now, right? So listening to that person that's been talking, or that person that might have got shot down 5 years ago, hasn't been speaking up in 5 years because they got shot down. Sometimes they just need a little bit of motivation to speak up again and bring something back that might have used to work a couple of years ago, but bring it back to the forefront and see how you can implement it.
So in that case, you're being more of a facilitator, right? You're facilitating that communication between the floor and the management.
Yeah.
But the other thing is you are bringing a very strict toolkit to that project as well. I mean, you've got these experiences with Lean, with different aspects of Six Sigma and whatnot. Those are real tools that most small business owners don't have.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's actually, if you think about how I truly got started, I'm going to tell you a story here. Yeah. Back in 2017, I was actually up at Saginaw State Valley University taking a training session on Lean. And we're sitting there one day. Now it's me and a group of three other people I was with. And we had kind of said, okay, why did we come here, right? We heard this content before, we know this. But then about 30 seconds later, someone spoke up over at the other side of the table and said, well, we've never seen this, right? We have just inherited a business from our father who passed away. Oh, yeah. And we are starting on this journey and we have no clue what this guy's talking about at the front level. So if you think about going back to how this started, it actually truly goes back to 2017, seeing that group of people there saying, we could use something like this, and then me working with the Small Business Development Center to actually put it in place and get out there to help the people with those tools they need to be successful. That's
great, because you're right. I mean, legacy businesses are handed down. Just because they're in the family doesn't mean they've got the tools to run the business correctly. So you're doing a definite value in that case. So did it take you some time to get momentum? It sounded like with the SBDC, you kind of had something lined up right away, but how long has it taken to get the momentum you really wanted?
It's probably still not there, right? So we're about 9 months into the year, right? So as far as when I started, but to get the momentum going, I really had to kickstart myself, because what I saw happen right away, I was like, okay, there's no accountability here anymore, right? I've got my own business now. I've stopped working for my old company. But one of the first things I did was join the Leadership Kenosha program that's put on by the Kenosha Area Chamber of Commerce. It's a 9-month leadership program where you get to interact with state officials, local officials, people at the jail system and the court system. And it was really a way to say, let's get involved in that, because there was some structure there and there's a cohort project there and there's connections, right? So one of the things I did right there was got involved with some charity on board of directors. And ultimately what that's doing for the momentum is right now it actually lead into, I've got something coming up this week that I'm working on, where a connection from that organization led to a connection here. Now it's leading to a client of mine up north in the state a little bit. So the momentum to me is really, I don't judge it based off how many clients I have right now. It's about the involvement that I'm doing with the entrepreneurial training program, with the Chamber of Commerce, with Leadership Kenosha, with different charity events going on inside the state and the county out here. So that's where the momentum, I think, really is for me, is I needed something. I found a way to get involved in the community. I realized I stepped away to be involved more in the community. What better way to do it than join a program that's going to help you learn more?
No, that's a great point. I look at consultants, and service organizations that when they're smaller, like yourself, there's a point where you're selling, then there's a point where you're working, right? And so there's this curve, and I know, like a couple other people and I have talked about this dolphin effect, right? So you're either selling or you're working, selling or you're working, and the key is, as a consultant, is how do you get that to even out, right? And so it's a different toolkit, it's a different skill set to do that than maybe as a consultant we don't have, but it's networking. The bottom line is just networking, getting your name out there, getting people who know, like, and trust you to do the work.
Trust is a big piece, right? So I've had to give away some volunteer time. I've had to do some free work here and there, and I've got no problem. It was part of my business plan, right? First year of my business plan, I knew I had to build trust in a community. And that's the funny thing, is I've lived out here for 45 years of my life. I really didn't know any of these people. I didn't know anything about the community out in the Kenosha area. And so I knew going in, I had a trust level that I had to build up, and it was going to take getting to know people and giving away some time and building connections.
Yeah, that's critical to make time for that, because a lot of people considering going out on their own. you don't have jobs coming in right out the door. Usually. There's a period of time where there's a delayed ramp, and you got to get to that point where people know you and trust you in order to bring you into their inner circle and have you do that work. So I appreciate that. That's something I've lived myself before in the past as well. Yeah. So name the person that helped you the most or supported you the most to get to where you are now.
Yeah. So if you think about, there's really two on this avenue, right? So one goes back to, his name is Dale. He's one of the advisors I mentioned up in Midland, right? So he is a guy that back in the day when I first met him, it was like, oh, we're going to bring Dale in. I'm like, okay. And it was like, was Dale in a good thing or a bad thing? And Dale generally came in and helped people who had organizational issues, right? So it's like, oh, so are we challenged right now? And it's like, well, a little bit, we weren't that challenged, but it was more, let's not make you become challenged. So let's have some interaction. So that's how I met Dale, and struck up a conversation. That was 2011. So if you think about it, that's 10 years ago. Been working with him. He was I would say, not only did it help me understand how to better do what I wanted to do, it was when I was having some challenges of thinking, do I really want to step away from the corporate career and start my own? There was multiple calls to him of, hey, you're not ready yet. You're not ready. I don't hear it in your voice. And then the final one was, all right, I hear it in your voice. You're ready to go. It's time, make the move. But then the second person that was most influential in this, the former leader of mine named Lisa, worked with her since 2011 as well. Big connections with her, great bond with her through the time in the company. The last call I made before I went on my own was to her. And it was more of, when you're trying to think about leaving a corporate career that you're in good standing with and that you've done really good things, I actually needed permission to leave. Right. It sounds crazy, but I needed permission to walk away from something that I'd helped build and that I was part of. And she made the perfect example. She just said, you know what? I can hear it in your voice, which means I can hear it in your voice. I know you well enough. I can hear it, and I know it's in your heart. Right. You're doing it for the right decisions. You're not doing it to go out and make $1 million in the consulting world. You're going to do it to follow a passion, to have no regrets in life. And it was really that conversation of connecting the input from Dale about who would help me get to where I'm at, to connecting it back with Lisa about, you know what, just go, give it a shot. You're going to be fine. Right. So that was really the two people that really helped make the decision of getting me started here. So.
It's interesting because I've talked to a lot of people. I've asked that same question to almost every guest I've had on the podcast, and a couple guests ago, and you're pretty much soundboarding exactly what he was saying, which is, I'm going to address that question. I'm going to ask people about their opinion who are in the industry, right? If they're not in the industry, I'll listen to them, but they maybe won't hold as much value in their opinion. But if people are in industry and I've worked with them in the past and they have that experience to say like go, no go, that's going to be something I'm going to more value. You're not going to ask your mom about, doing stuff in your space, right? Because she's a mom and, she has her own bias, but she's not experienced in that avenue. So good for you. You went and talked to the people who are in the space, who worked with you, who know you, and got that extra piece or confidence, right? Yeah. A lot of people need that. A lot of people just need that kick to get started, that little bit to just jumpstart everything. So it's a common item. What was the biggest challenge in starting the company? So you've got this idea, you've got the external validation. What was the biggest challenge to getting Double E to be something that, yes, I'm going to go out and market this now, and I got clients coming in?
Yeah, I think it was knowing that you don't have to create all the content right off the bat, right? So I spent a good chunk of time coming into this where I was developing my content, getting my thoughts down, and I realized, you know what? I could be wasting all my time here, because the first day I go out to talk to a client about this and it doesn't fit perfectly, they're going to say, change it to what we need. And I'm like, you know what? That's what I'm doing. I'm actually doing customizable services. So the minute that I sat back and said, it's not about my content, it's not about what I know already, it's about how I can help. That was the biggest mindset change that I had right off the bat, because you just think, okay, I need to be able to present something to someone when I meet with them. And then I realized, you know what? It's not about that anymore. It's about, because they don't know me, right? In the corporate world, in the company, they knew who I was. It was more about, okay, I'm going to just listen first. I'm going to take more time to talk and orientate myself with the people. And then I'll go home and create the content specifically for their needs. So when I come back, they actually show that, okay, he listened, right? He listened, He heard what we said. He created something for us. We're not buying something off the shelf that he's trying to put in with everybody else.
Right. That's interesting. The thing, thing that's going through my mind right now is the saying, and this took me a long time to understand and adapt to myself as well. I tend to be a perfectionist in the things I do, and it does stall you. It keeps you from moving forward faster. And sometimes it's okay to get a C, right? You don't have to get an A every time, but I like about your approach is you got a C on what you prepared, but then before you gave it to the customer, you turned it into an A based on what they gave to you for the recommendations.
Yeah, exactly.
That's interesting. So you talked a little bit about how you dealt with those changes, how you dealt with, basically get the content only to a certain point, customize it on the back end. That's all great feedback and information for the listeners. The question that I have for you is being a process guy. One thing that saying that somebody brought up to me the other week is, you don't want to be the landscaper whose house on the block looks like garbage, right? You don't want to be the one who doesn't use your own services. Do you use your own services? Do you create process for what you do in Double E?
Yeah, definitely. I think everything that I do, I have my own entity for it, right? So if you think about, I do some strategic planning. I've got a strategic plan that I meet with my advisors on and with the lady down in Florida. If you think about the expectations and how we're going to communicate, and team expectations is another thing I do really with some teams. Got that, right? How are we going to communicate, and how are we going to run our one-on-one meetings that we have down with the lady in Florida and with the other people I talk with? So pretty much everything I do, I look at it from a perspective of, because here's the key learning I got there. I thought going into this, I might not need to do it for everything, but then I found myself doing rework on stuff when I didn't go to a process base and I didn't think about the desired state first for myself. And I said, you know what, I need to be able to prove to, if my customers say, my clients say, or one of the students say, hey, show us your plan, I need to have that ready to go for trust and credibility stake right there. So I just found it easier to start doing it every time. And it doesn't have to be much, right? It's starting with the end in mind. It's working back and showing, okay, what are the potholes that could happen there? And, where are we at now? Why are we doing it? And then how are we going to get there? And then kind of mapping that out. And it's going to be flexible. But it really goes back to that's a business owner's mindset, right? That's really what I try to instill in my customers and clients. It's really about, okay, make sure I'm living that business owner's mindset as well, which goes down to everything as far as, how you do things and ultimately what you spend, right? Because realize without the process or without having those decisions, you could be wasting your own money. And that's another learning from coming out of the corporate world. This is all my own money now, right? This isn't the bank's money. This isn't the corporation's money. It's a different animal nowadays. Without a process, you run the risk of losing money or losing clients' money too, based on how you do things with them.
I take the time to document every process that we do at OPSQC, and it drives some people nuts. But I always I'm a process guy. That's what I do. If I wasn't doing that myself, there's a problem, right? And the thing I always tell people is it doesn't have to be an operational process out on the floor. Business process more than anything, because it changes hands probably more frequently than the ones on the floor, need to be detailed. You need to write down what the progression is. What are the inputs and outputs? And, I think if anything, it just forces us to think through it. And then if you put a continuous improvement engine on the back end of it, it's just constant iteration, right? You're just driving continuous improvement in your practice.
I think another element too is it's adapting. I've done this for myself and a client as well, is you adapt the SWOT analysis to yourself, right? And you look at your strengths, you look at I call them development opportunities instead of weaknesses, but then also the threats, right? And the threats that, okay, what happens if you get taken out of you get sick, you get ill, something happens to you, or you just want to take some time off. How do you make sure the service you're providing to your clients doesn't suffer in that case? So.
That's, being a quality auditor for many, many, many years in corporate America and beyond. It's funny because as an auditor, you always come in and people always say, oh, well, what if so-and-so gets hit by the bus tomorrow? How do you know your process is going to be consistent? And, I always found that to be a very dreary type outcome. And so we always tried to change that to be a more positive outcome. Say, well, what if you won the lottery tomorrow, right? If you won the lottery, you went to buy your own island. Is your business still going to run the same? Maybe you don't care. Yeah. But for your client's sake, I hope you do care, right?
Yeah, I hate to see your legacy go out with 5 bad reviews because you were just walked away from your clients, right?
Exactly. So there's so much that goes into this business we've talked about. There's the planning, your own finances, there's the emotional roller coaster. I mean, what was it that really convinced you were going to do this no matter what? You that burn the boats, I'm going 110% in this direction.
It was the regret factor, right? And you look at the timing and it was just, I go back to that story I told about the group of people who lost their father and started their business, right?
Mm-hmm.
I actually made this decision on Father's Day of 2020, right? And that was 25 years after my own father's passing, right? So it was, everything kind of came together, right? Think back to how I got the bug for it, did the work to kind of get to the point
Sure.
and connect the dots on 25 years after the passing of my father. And then it was, you know what? I would have regret, and I couldn't live with that regret of saying, okay, I had one foot in the corporate world. I had one foot in what I wanted to do. I wasn't being fair to the corporate people I worked with because I wasn't 100% bought in. I wasn't going to be fair to myself if I didn't get going now. And I just had to make that decision. So I think if you look back, it was going to be the regret of not doing it is what really drove me just to jump right into it.
Sure. Do you have a family history of entrepreneurship?
No, I think this is life with family. Family was grandfather, uncles, all firefighters, right? So,
Okay.
No, really, I'm the first. Now that I think about it, I'm probably the first one in my immediate family to start. I've got a cousin who started his own business back 23 years ago. So I think, but yeah, some cousins maybe, but in my immediate family, I'm the only one that's started it.
Paving the way. All right,
Yeah,
I love it. Is there any marketing channels that really prove superior to others when you take a step back and look at the ramp up of momentum? Did you take some hits and misses on different marketing channels? Was there certain ones that work better than others?
Yeah, so I'll be honest, right? I've taken the hits on the LinkedIn marketing, on the ads and the Facebook ads. There's some clicks here and there. I would say though, the one that's been most successful for me, I can't stress enough, is the alignment with the Small Business Development Center. And going through the class, and to the point where I took the class, but then I also came and did some observations for her and worked with those. Because really what you're doing there is the Small Business Development Center offers that free consultations to a lot of all their clients, but they don't always have everything. They don't have access to everything, right? So there's a need for people like myself to be connected with them so that we can help collaborate with them and find out how can they best serve their clients. So I would go back to the concept of getting involved into the, with the SBDC. And that really comes from a book I read by Ken Coleman, The Proximity Principle.
Okay.
And his book, he's from the Dave Ramsey Network. And Ken's book really talks about, if you want to do what you love, you need to get by people that do what you love.
Yeah.
And so when I read that book, I actually, did the homework from it, took some questions. That's actually what really kind of led me towards the Chamber of Commerce, which then led me towards the SBDC, which led me to all that of like, hey, there's people putting on virtual training sessions. There's people putting on in-person training session. That's what I want to do, right? So it was really more about, if I think about marketing channel, it's more about that connection with them, giving them some time back to them, getting involved with them. Because what happens there is you meet new people daily and weekly and monthly coming through who are trying to start businesses, who might be thinking about their second act, which is going to be 5 years down the line. But the more you can engage with them, to me, I just see it as a nice client pipeline of helping people that want to be successful.
Absolutely. I love that. It's interesting you mentioned that about the people you surround yourself with, right? Because I think they were saying that look at the 5 people you surround yourself with the most, right? That's, people who are growing you and changing you. Yeah. So by having this constant influx of clientele from the SBDC, right, you're getting exposed to a lot of different things. You're getting exposed to a lot of different opportunities, but a lot of different ways of thinking about business as well. So that's an interesting concept. And definitely that book, Ken Coleman's Proximity Principle, we'll put a link to that at the end of the podcast for the listeners here so that they can reach out and grab that. So where do you see Double E in 3 to 5 years?
Yeah, so 3 to 5 years, I want to be seen almost like a trainer on retainer, right? So someone that can come in on a fractional basis and work with clients that says, you know what, we don't need these services 100% of the time throughout the year, but we need this going, a couple hours here a month, right? So 3 to 5 years, I see myself probably having a couple independent contractors. That's the model I want to utilize, is so, because I realize the way I've seen that the model there is, I like being able to absorb people that might want to do what they love, and they might not want to start up and do all the stuff it's going to take to start a business. So with that model, it allows me to work with like-minded people and give them the platform to be able to do what they love without having to go through some of the challenges that starting your own business and trying to figure out how they're going to go about that. But yeah, so to kind of sum up that question, 3 to 5 years, a couple independent contractors, having training programs inside the organizational effectiveness space, the talent development space, the continuous improvement space, the training system space, having learning series inside of all of those, which then allow for rapid deployment out to one's location to be able to build on those learnings that we might do virtually, but then go and act it for business results on the shop floor.
Absolutely. I like that. Trainer on retainer. That's a good tagline. When you sit back and look at the gig economy in full swing, you mentioned about being a contractor and like contractor based. I think that's important. More and more people I talk to, obviously in this remote virtual environment, it makes total sense, right? I mean, because people aren't in the same location. You mentioned you've got a colleague down in Florida.
Yeah.
You really could operate anywhere with this type of business, right?
Good. Could operate anywhere, but I would also say could operate anywhere where I build enough trust to be successful. All right. So in theory, I could go in Denver right now and work out in my buddy's basement, but I don't know anybody in Denver that out there. To me, I don't want to go 100% virtual. I did this a lot to be in person and be working in face-to-face with people. Well, yes, I've got the virtual option now. That's not the long term, but I also do believe that now the virtual option is going to help build trust because it's another way for someone to meet you before they actually let you in their door and let you pull back the curtain on what they're doing.
That's one of the key things I love about this podcast too, is, showcasing business owners like yourself. You get to present yourself to them and they get to know a little bit about who you are before even actually bringing you in the door. So it's a win-win in that regard. Yeah. So biggest lesson you learned in your startup experience?
Biggest lesson I've learned, you're not as smart as you think you are.
And why do you say that?
There's just times where you think you know it and you think you know, and it's sometimes what happens is you go to solution space too soon, right? And you think you can solve someone's issue, or you think you may have seen that before, but then you don't realize what they've gone through and what they're going through on a day like today. And it's just the whole concept of everyone should always think about, what can I learn from that person I'm going to go talk to? All right. That person does not need to learn from you today. They've got their own plan today. But if you can put yourself in a mindset of, what am I going to learn from that person? It really helps you clean your slate of saying, you know what, I'm going in to listen today. I'm not going in to teach. I'm not going in to educate. I'm going in to listen. So I always try to tell myself that they don't need me here. Right? I don't have to be here. They don't have to pay any rate for me. It's the concept though, is listen first, don't have any biases towards what you're hearing, understand them. And then ultimately you might build a better relationship with them.
I would second and third that. That's probably one of the biggest lessons I've learned too, being a small business owner, entrepreneur, is listening is key. Yeah. And allowing people the time to speak and then not just like really, just hearing them, but trying to absorb what they're saying and process that, right, before I respond and put my own, spin on it, right? And definitely I encourage people, if you find that you have problems listening, there are many, many tools out there to evaluate and to go watch and learn and study, and, just a lot of active listening type of tools. So that is a key trait. That is a key thing that people need to learn for sure. We talked about what your biggest lesson is. We talked about the future outlook, 3 to 5 years. How can somebody listening to the podcast or watching the podcast on YouTube today, how can they support you and your business?
I'd say the best thing for that would be to support small business in your area. And before you go to Amazon looking for something, look at the Chamber of Commerce in your area and look at their business directory and look for a service there and just type in a key. A lot of those business directories are set up. You just type in a keyword like you would on Amazon, and you're going to be taken to a page of 7 different options. The reason I say that is, if you think about the Kenosha area Chamber of Commerce up here in Wisconsin, 70% of the membership is 15 members or 15 employees or less. Sure. Right? And they're putting money into the chamber to make the chamber successful, and they're hoping to get some return on investment from their membership there. So the more you can go and try to support small business first and know, there's going to be times you need something instantaneously and you need it next day. Fine. But if you have a little bit of extra time, I would just ask people to support their local chambers, look at the business directory, go to a networking event with them, meet someone there that could realize that connection and your income, the money that you spend with them could go a long way towards their sustainability.
Yes. Support small, buy local. Yeah. Small businesses, entrepreneurs are the growth engine of the U.S. economy. Yeah. And COVID has just really laid down a nasty hit on that industry, by and large. So definitely people need to consider what you're doing when you don't buy local and you don't support small businesses. Great advice there. Ed, thanks so much for taking the time to be on the podcast and sharing your experience. It's a pleasure as always. Really looking forward to what EE Workplace Solutions does here in 2021 and beyond. And we'll definitely be keeping in touch on that. Before you head out, any last words of wisdom to the listeners?
Just listen, right? Listen to your employees, listen to your leadership, just listen for things that don't sound right. And I also call it the shake your head moments, right? When you're shaking your head about different things and you're saying, okay, that's not right. That's exactly when you should call myself, you should call someone like you, call someone in a space that can help you with a process-based thinking of, okay, we know we're shaking our heads. We know this isn't right. How do we make it happen? And making it happen doesn't mean just putting it on paper. It also means coaching those behaviors of the people, not only the shop floor, but also the leadership, and bringing people together with standard expectations to help drive the success of one's business.
Absolutely. Appreciate that there, Ed. Thanks again. And to our listeners, be well, be safe, and be productive. To reach out to Ed at EE, you can use the LinkedIn contact info below, or you can reach him through the Contact Us page at eeworkplace.com. Additional links discussed during the podcast are below. If you want to recommend somebody to appear on the podcast as a guest, please email us at info@opsqc.com. If you're interested in sponsoring a podcast, please reach out to us at the same email. We'd love to have your support.